Okay, so it's time for my final thoughts on the Doctor Who Christmas Carol Christmas special. Well, I actually really enjoyed this. I probably will go so far as to say it's probably the best, or rather second best, episode of the latest series with Matt Smith. Where to begin now? The story, which is, of course, as probably anyone has already guessed, is a take on Christmas Carol, which, when you think about it, with all the time travel and sort of changing elements to it, how a person can change, is very much a Doctor Who story. And I admit that this is surprisingly well done, with the Doctor going back and changing Sardic's memories, and having him meet, don't remember her name, the singer, who's cryogenically frozen because of her disease. That was a I thought that they actually did that rather well, and the kid who played the young Sardic wasn't really annoying. You can tell that he's from, a high class, in his sort of voice and tone, but he wasn't annoying. And neither was the man who played the teenage or sort of young adult Sardic, was actually pulled off surprisingly well, though there were elements of sort of very teen romance there, but then again that really sort of fit. So the Ghost of Christmas bits with the Doctor did work. The bits with the Ghost of Christmas Present with Amy were okay, but it sort of was bizarre considering that suddenly, Sardic had gone from crying and reminiscing in the past bits to suddenly going all sour again in the present bits, because, in the original Christmas Carol, he gradually becomes, a better person over the course of the story and sort of improves his nature. Here, it's sort of like, it dips, it starts up with the Doctor Ghost of Past bit, then it dips with the Ghost of Present, and then when the Doctor comes back for the Ghost of Christmas Future, it comes back up again, which is a little bit weird, but then again, I suppose it's to try and differentiate the story from the original. And the last bit is actually quite moving, the meeting of the two Sardics was actually a moving bit, I actually felt touched, which is not that often in a TV show. The acting all around was very good, I mean, let's face it, Michael Gambon is good in anything, and he is probably, so even though he's not playing Scrooge, Sardic is essentially a Doctor Who Scrooge, so I will say he's probably one of one of the best actors to sort of play a Scrooge role. He really did bring a lot to the part, and he, when he was, and he was very believable when you see him crying over the old photos and such, and and we genuinely feel for him, at points. Of course, I'm talking about the guest stars first. The singer who played the Sardic's, became Sardic's love interest, was actually good, considering that singers don't really have the best track record of, good acting in films and TV. She actually pulled off a decent job. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it worked. She did bring, a very believability to the part, and I did feel sad when she, was going to tell Sardic that she was ill and all that. It didn't feel too cheesy. But now onto the regulars. Matt Smith, again, is, I think, actually, as I said in my Series 5 thoughts, I think he's a good Doctor and a good actor. I think the problem is that they are obsessed with giving him pop culture references. Like, literally, he goes through most of the episode, I'd say about half his lines are just pop culture references, saying things like, oh yeah, I met this and this in 1952, and I met him and had a party with him in 1904, and things like that. And some people can say it's to differentiate him from David, but David also did that with the pop culture references in his stories. It's like, in the original series, you had those cultural references, such as the Doctor, writing for Shakespeare or working with Leonardo on his inventions, that was sort of funny in a very quirky, nerdy way. The problem with, but it was very occasional. The problem with it now is that it's in every episode, literally. In pretty much in the whole of Series 5, every episode had at least about 2 or 3 culture references, with the Doctor saying, oh yeah, I met this guy, was really nice, his real name was such and such. It loses the nerdy funniness. It just becomes a cheap laugh, and it isn't, and it doesn't have the sort of the cheese to it that made it funny in the original sense. But he was good. I will say that he is improving constantly as the Doctor, and I think that if they can get the next series right and actually, and just end the story arc, I think he can really shine. I think he really will have an opportunity to shine at some point. As for Amy Pond and Rory, again, it's the whole kissogram thing. It's essentially a censored version of a stripper. It's getting annoying now. Stephen, you're a good writer, and so far you've produced a decent series, but stop with the whole kissogram thing. Seriously, you stop bringing it back, okay? It's really annoying, okay? I know it's almost sort of a tongue-in-cheek in-joke to sort of the fact that many Doctor Who assistants wear short skirts and that, but seriously, there's a thing called overkill. You're doing overkill. You're overusing the joke of, oh yeah, the assistant's gotta have a short skirt. Just stop, okay? And the whole thing about them wearing the costumes, and sort of there being this sort of subtext about sort of a weird fetish is, why? Why, Stephen? What's the point? What does that add if they have some kind of costume fetish? What does that add to the characters? That doesn't add anything, Now, if you want to make your characters popular amongst the fans, you need to make them likable. A costume fetish is not funny, and it's not likable either. It's very cheesy, and it comes off as very creepy, actually. I mean, come on, you're supposed to root for these guys, not sort of question their behavior. But the acting itself isn't bad. They do pull it off, although I should have said this back in the story bit, but the whole thing with the spaceship crashing, it wasn't in the episode enough, and people are saying, what are you talking about? And well, the sense of urgency was really lacking. It doesn't ruin the story as a whole, but it is kind of annoying when you think about it and you look back and you say, it didn't have urgency. You didn't feel like you were on a fast-paced adventure as the Doctor was racing to save the ship, You didn't feel that. There just wasn't enough times in the episode when you see the ship crashing through the atmosphere and you see the people screaming and in danger, The thing is, people can say repetition can get annoying, but in a story like this, you need to always implement the threat every couple of minutes or so. Like every, I'd say 10-15 minutes, implement the threat. The problem is, between the first time we see it, and the second time when Sardik is projected onto the ship, it's like half an hour, 35 minutes in between. And that's too long. That's just too long. In a story where you have something like that, a speeding object that's going to kill people, you need to always remind people of the threat because it adds a sense of urgency and a heightened atmosphere to the story. It's one of those little nitpicks that people are going to really, get on the episode for, It's one of those things that, really, it's like in Tooth and Claw with the whole thing of the monks knowing Kung Fu and all that. It's one of those things that fans are going to be like, what the hell? That doesn't make sense. Music, effects, design, it's all well done. Even the shark, yeah, it looks fake, but considering it's a TV production, it does actually look pretty good. And the atmosphere in the ice room or whatever it's called, the stasis, the suspended animation coffins, it does look atmospheric with the turquoisey light, I will give it that. And the direction, is pretty solid all around, it's, when it, it's one of those sorts of directions which knows what it needs to be when a moment in the story comes, and I will say that it was good. So yeah, so all in all, it's a decent little story. It's you know, there's one big, nitpick which I just mentioned, but it's not. It doesn't destroy the episode. The acting is pretty good all around, and the story does, is entertaining enough. It's heartwarming enough, and it is an interesting take on A Christmas Carol, and I will say it's probably one of the redeeming factors of an otherwise mediocre series.